Hello scientists, and welcome to this video on the circulatory system. So before we begin, let's see if you have a circulatory system. If you do, you'll have a pulse. So let's check for a pulse. Go ahead and you can take your two fingers. You've probably done this in gym class. And you can find your pulse either on the side of your neck, like in the picture. You'll have to put a little bit of pressure down in order to feel your pulse, or you can do the technique on your wrist. Same thing. You might have to move it around a little bit. Press down until you feel that pulse. So where is it coming from? Let's find out. So in this video, I will introduce you to the parts of the human circulatory system and also the processes that allow the nutrients to get to our cells. Let's get started. The circulatory system. Its function is to transport blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the body. It has three main parts: the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood. Sounds simple, right? It's actually a complex system. It just doesn't have as many parts as a lot of the other systems. Let's start with the heart. The heart is the pump. It is what pumps the blood around the body. It is a muscle that expands and contracts, and every time it contracts, you feel that as your pulse. And it pushes the blood back and forth to your heart, back and forth to your lungs, and out to the rest of your body, and then back again. Now let's talk a little bit about blood. Blood is a fluid that travels within the blood vessels. It is made up of four different parts: the red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, and also plasma. Also in blood is where you're going to also find nutrients and water and gases, but blood itself is made up of these four components. Let's talk a little bit about what they do. The red blood cells, those are what carry the oxygen and the nutrients and the waste products around the body, and they are shaped like a little cup. And you can see that little cup space right there, and that's what is able to hold all the things that it needs to carry. And our white blood cells, these are what fight diseases and protect us from infection. So when you get sick, sometimes your white blood cell count will be elevated because it's making more white blood cells to fight off that infection that you have. The platelets are super important because if you've ever gotten a paper cut or skinned your knee or gotten any cut on your body where blood is coming out of your body, you wouldn't want it to keep coming out. So platelets are what stop the blood from flowing. So they kind of weave together and they create like a wall or a barrier from the inside of your body to the outside of the body, and that's how your blood stops flowing. Plasma is just a fluid. It's kind of a yellowy fluid that all the other components that I talked about, the nutrients and the minerals and the water molecules and gases, this is where you're going to find all the rest of those things. So let's talk about blood vessels. Blood vessels, they are like the roadmap in your body that allows the blood to flow and deliver things to each part of your body. One thing I want to point out is that in the picture you see that they are red and blue. That is how we distinguish in a picture the difference between arteries and veins. But if you actually were to look at them in your body, they would not be red or blue. Your arteries tend to be more bright red because they're carrying blood with more oxygen, which makes them more red. And the veins that are blue, those sometimes are not as bright red because they don't have as much oxygen. They're taking blood back to your heart and lungs to get some. So anyways, there are three types of blood vessels. They are the arteries, capillaries, and veins. Let's take a look a little bit more about those. They each have their own unique structure because they each have a different function. So you'll see the arteries are a lot thicker. This is because they're carrying blood away from your heart. So they have to be able to withstand a lot of that pressure or force from the pumping of the heart. So one way that you can remember what arteries do, if you can see the A for artery and the A for away, arteries take blood away from the heart. Capillaries, We talked a little bit about these in being in the small intestines, but they are throughout your whole entire body. This is every single place where an exchange of blood and nutrients and oxygen and anything else that's being exchanged between the tissues or the cells. This is happening in the capillaries. Veins, they are not as thick as the arteries, and these are what carry the blood back towards your heart. Let's take a look at the blood flow, and you can see that every time your heart pumps, your blood is being pushed through your blood vessels. And the picture over on the opposite side here, you'll notice that everything is connected. So this blood is circulating through your body. So it comes into your heart, goes out to your lungs to get the oxygen, then it goes all around to all the different parts of your body, and then it returns back. And you can see that in these spaces right here where there's that exchange going on, this is where the exchange of the nutrients and the waste and everything is happening. This is where the capillaries are. This is the space in between the arteries and the veins. Those are the capillaries. And then that blood goes back up to the heart to go back to the lungs and then back around the body. All right, let's recap about the circulatory system. It delivers oxygen and nutrients to the body while removing waste products as well. So it is made up of the heart, which is the pump, the blood that has 4 different parts, and the blood vessels. So now let's transition and talk about how nutrients get into our blood. So I have a picture here of a tea bag and a beaker with some water. And if you've ever made tea before, you know that inside the tea bag, once it starts to get into the water, then the water turns into tea. Well, none of the tea bag is still intact, so how did it turn into tea? Well, the tea had to go, once it was brewed, had to move from the inside of the tea bag out into the rest of the water. And this is what is happening when your nutrients are going from your small intestines to your bloodstream. Now, this is a process called diffusion, and it is a process that happens in the small intestines, but that's not the only place. Diffusion is a process where things are moving from one high concentration to a low concentration, meaning more of something on one side than the other. So I'm going to go ahead and show this to you again, and I want you to watch. Okay, so on the inside of our small intestines, the nutrients, there's more of them, and so inside each of the villi, there are the capillaries. And they pick up the nutrients and they put them into the bloodstream. Now, my diagram is not perfect because I had the nutrients coming through and going out to the other side. This is the actual blood vessel, so the nutrients would go into the blood vessel and then start on their journey around the body. So this is what would happen once the nutrients got to the cell. They would be able to pass through the cell membrane and get to the cell so that the cell could use them to make energy. So let's recap. Materials such as water, nutrients, gases, and waste are carried by the blood, and these processes of diffusion and osmosis are what allow the materials to be exchanged between the blood and the cells. So one example of this happening is when the nutrients leave the inside of the small intestines and they go through the process of diffusion. They get into the bloodstream. The blood goes through the blood vessels and carries it to the cells and the tissues that need it, which is all of them. All right, that was a lot. Sorry about that, but it is the end.